Suspected Al-Qaeda attack kills senior military commander and other 3 in Abyei Governorate. Joint forces announce intercepting Houthi drone strike in Hodeidah province. The United Nations Special Envoy Hans Grundberg concludes visit to the Saudi capital Riyadh. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. I am Abir Ali and you are watching the English news. The commander of security-built forces in Abyei Governorate, Abdul Latif al-Sayed, was killed today after an explosive device targeted his convoy in Wadi Amran. According to a medical source, 3 bodies were arrived abroad as a result of the explosion that bear the hallmark of Al-Qaeda. This report has more.
Media sources announced that Abdul Latif al-Sayed, commander of the security-built forces of the Transitional Council in Abyei Governorate, was killed in a terrorist attack east of Abyei Governorate, southern Yemen. The sources said Abdul Latif al-Sayed was killed along with a number of his companions when his convoy was targeted by a terrorist attack in Wadi Amran in Mudia district, east of Abyei, in which Al-Qaeda elements are active. The assassination, which bears the hallmarks of Al-Qaeda, represents a setback of efforts to combat terrorism in the southern governorates of Yemen. And analysts believe that Al-Qaeda activity has begun to emerge again. Despite the decline in its attacks during the recent period, due to the impact of the military operations launched by the government forces against it, the organization's activity has returned, targeting the Yemeni army gatherings in operations described as revenge. International data indicate that Al-Qaeda is still strong in Yemen, despite the intense campaign launched 10 years ago by both the U.S. Army and the Arab coalition, taking advantage of the state of chaos in the country. The return of Al-Qaeda to the forefront may be due to the state of security disintegration in the governorates under the control of the legitimate Yemeni government, which has created serious security gaps through which Al-Qaeda penetrates from time to time in light of the Presidential Leadership Council's inability to impose the sovereignty of the state.
Minister of Defense Mohsen Al-Dairi warned of the danger of the Houthi militia cooperation with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Al-Dairi pointed out that the militia danger is not limited to Yemen only, but extends to the region and the world. This report has more details.
Yemen's defense ministry has issued a strong warning about the dangers posed by the Iran-backed Houthi militants' continued attacks against the army. The ministry urged the international community to be more steadfast in dealing with the obstinate Houthi opposition to peace. Yemeni Defense Minister Lieutenant General Mohsen Mohammed Al-Dairi warned of a potential collaboration between terrorist Houthi militias and Al-Qaeda and ISIS organizations aimed at destabilizing free territories. He stressed that these militias pose a threat not just to Yemen, but to the rest of the region and the world as a whole. He said this at a meeting with the political division team of the UN Special Envoy for Yemen on Tuesday in the interim capital Aden. Al-Dairi emphasized that the Houthi forces have resisted any arrangements or pacts made to bring about peace in Yemen, according to Sabah news agency. He emphasized the need for the United Nations and the international community to play a more determined role in battling the Houthis' intransigence and arrogance as they consistently reject peace initiatives. In response, Yemeni Army spokesman Brigadier General Abdu Majali stated that the military is ready to fight the Houthis. He emphasized that the fronts had been successfully defended against all Houthi breaches and assaults. Majali told Ash-Sharq al-Awsat that the army has grown more prepared, capable, and well-trained. The militias are weak in the face of our well-prepared forces and are being shunned in areas under their control, he noted. Soon the people will rise against them, and a decisive military solution is the secure path to spare the Yemeni people from these acts of sabotage and terrorism, he said, adding that Yemeni military have gone through an extensive amount of qualifying and specialized training that enhance morale and readiness to combat the militias.
In Hodeidah, air defenses of joint forces intercepted a Houthi drone attack in Hais district. Military sources reported that the militia's drone was flying north of densely populated area before it was shot down by air forces of the joint forces. In Taiz, one child was wounded by Houthi militia snipers in Makbana district west of Taiz city. The Yemeni Network for Rights and Freedoms said that a 17-year-old boy was shot by a Houthi militia sniper while he was grazing sheep near his house. The United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grandberg, concluded a two-day visit to the Saudi capital, Riyadh. During his visit, Grandberg met with the head of Presidential Leadership Council, Rashad Al-Alimi. They discussed ongoing mediation efforts to agree on measures to improve living conditions, implement a nationwide ceasefire, and resume an inclusive Yemeni-owned political process under UN auspices. The Special Envoy also met with the Yemeni Prime Minister Ma'in Abdul Malik, Foreign Minister Ahmed bin Mubarak, and the Saudi ambassador to Yemen. A delegation from the United Nations Mission to Protect Hodeidah Agreement, UNAMHA, visited Hais district south of Hodeidah. The visit touched on the health, education, water services, and the vital support needed to help citizens and the displaced people in the area. Doctors Without Borders reported a significant increase in malnutrition cases among children in Amran Governorate. The organization indicated that there is an alarming increase in malnutrition cases among children under 5 in Amran. It noted that the increase of malnutrition cases in the governorate reached 60% compared to last year. Informed sources in Sana'a revealed that the Houthi have started the trial of dozens of civilians detained inside prisons with no felony committed. Many of them are subjected to different sorts of extreme torture, which under it they are forced to admit crimes they never committed. This report has more.
A Houthi court in Sana'a began trying dozens of civilians, most of whom are unemployed farmers, students, and teachers, on charges of collaborating with the legitimate government, which carries a death penalty. This court has already issued hundreds of death sentences against officials, activists, and journalists on the same charge. The court held its first session in Sana'a to consider the case in which 49 detainees, including 12 unemployed, 6 university students, and a number of teachers, farmers, workers in the pharmaceutical sector, and 2 soldiers are being tried. They are accused of working for the legitimate government in the confrontation with the Houthi group. Lawyer Abdelmajid Sabra, who pleads for the abductees with the Houthis, stated that he attended the investigation with some members of the group at the Public Prosecution Office before referring them to court. They talked a lot about the violations they have been subjected to in intelligence prisons since their detention. The detainees agreed that they were prevented from visiting and contacting their relatives in the outside world for nearly 9 months, and each one of them was detained during that period in a solitary cell. The lawyer stated that one of the detainees indicated that the periods he spent in solitary confinement amounted to 11 months, while another detainee suffers from very difficult psychological conditions, and it was supposed to stop interrogating him until he receives the necessary treatment. However, the prosecution investigated him. The detainees were subjected to various forms of physical and moral torture. The lawyer asked the prosecution for a complete copy of the case file so that he could present his defenses. However, it was refused, which is a major violation of their right to defense in addition to other violations. The defense lawyer stated that when he and his colleague entered the courtroom in its first session, they found that it was equipped with cameras for filming, and it appears that they belong to the Security and Intelligence Service. The lawyer objected to that, but the Houthi judge threatened to expel them from the hall.
Coming up in the news. Teachers in Houthi-run areas escalate strike to demand salaries which have been suspended for years.
اسمي سنة وأنا لسه من سنة. لما بدأت الحرب كان عمري سنتين. كنت أخاف أوقات بس الرسم يسعدني. حلمي أن أكون رسامة عالمية. أمنيتي صعود سلم النجاح وأحقق كل أحلامي. أنا سالم من حضرموت وأنا أحب التصوير. لما بدأت الحرب كان عمري 6 سنوات. أحب تصوير كل جميل في بلدي.
Welcome back. Teachers in the areas under the control of the Houthi militia continue to strike, calling for paying their salaries. The following report has more.
Despite the threats of dismissal, the campaign of arrests and the repression with which the Houthi group's authority faced the teacher strike in the areas of its control. They continue for the second week to strike in various governorates and adhere to the demand to pay their salaries that have been cut off for 7 years, and equate them with the Houthi leaders and officials who receive their salaries continuously and without interruption. According to the Teachers Club and educational sources in Sana'a, Damar and Al Bayda, male and female teachers continue to confront the educational departments of the Houthi group, which threaten to dismiss the strikers from work and replace them with those affiliated with the group. The sources confirmed that many union committee officials were threatened and summoned to education departments for interrogation and accusations of working for other parties, although their demands are clear, specific, and legal. In turn, the head of the preparatory committee for the Male and Female Teachers Club stated that the Houthi group arrested the Secretary General of the club on the background of demanding salaries, and confirmed in a statement signed in his name that the leaders of the Houthi authorities and all their employees are in the so-called Supreme Political Council, the House of Representatives, the Shura Council, Electricity and Communications, Water, Customs and Taxes. They receive their monthly salaries without interruption from the bank in Sana'a, while teachers are deprived of it for the 7th year in a row. The head of the preparatory committee for the Teachers Club denounced the security measures taken by the revolutionary group against the striking teachers, and said that instead of dealing realistically with their demands and addressing the problem of teachers' salaries, the unrecognized government began to take arbitrary security measures against the strikers, where they arrested the group here and there. Then the matter developed with a threat to the union leaders, indicating that the education offices summoned union leaders for interrogation on charges of demanding salaries.
Yemeni government called on the United Nations to pressure the Houthis to release frozen balances of Yemeni airways in its areas of control. During his meeting with the officials from the office of the UN envoy, the Minister of Transport stressed the need to lift the restrictions imposed by the Houthi militias on the flow of goods and commodities between the governments. Marib gas station went out of service due to technical problems, causing a power outage in the entire city. During the recent days and weeks, the station suffered several malfunctions due to increased loads and technical problems. The gas station used to supply most of the governorates of the Republic with electric energy before it stopped as a result of the war. The agriculture sector in Yemen is facing a number of challenges, such as the climatic change, lack of water resources, and the high prices of fertilizers. The war has even compounded the suffering of farmers. The following report has more details.
With their plentiful crop yields, these sprawling acres in Ma'rib Governorate are an essential source of income for locals. The agricultural farms produce a variety of vegetables and fruits. However, the rise in fertilizer prices has led production to grow stagnant, threatening farmer livelihoods.
We struggle with incredible prices across all commodities, including fertilizers and pesticides. We now purchase urea fertilizer for 220 Saudi riyal, and a lot of what goes into that total is the cost of transporting. Farmers are immensely frustrated with the slim profit margins and low production output.
The high prices of fertilizers, their transportation costs, and their scarce availability in markets prompted farmers to search for alternative sources. However, solutions remain short-term, impractical, and insufficient to cover agricultural lands for extended periods. This gap in resources has significantly halted cultivation and reduced production rates.
Since 2011, mass restrictions have been imposed on fertilizer importation because authorities fear the chemicals within could be used to manufacture explosives. However, the majority of fertilizers we use in agriculture, such as urea, sulfate and ammonium, cannot be utilized for other purposes.
Many farmers and suppliers attribute the suspension of fertilizer imports to the ongoing war and the rise in national currency exchange rates. The coalition forces have reportedly prevented chemical fertilizer shipments from entering the country for fear of being used for military purposes. In the wake of this measure, farmers now fear their sole source of income will come to a grinding halt.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Suspected Al-Qaeda attack kills senior military commander and 3 others in Abiyan Governorate. Joint forces announce intercepting Houthi drone strike in Hodeidah province. The United Nations Special Envoy Hans Grundberg concludes visit to the Saudi capital Riyadh. This is the end of the news. It was Abir Ali, and thank you for watching.